Awesome. Okay. I don't have any students yet. Do we have, how do we check? Okay, so we do have, okay, so we do have one attendee that is also online. So hi, Kenneth. Nice to meet you. We are currently going to collect more students because their their lunch hour may have ran over a little bit. Let me also pull this up. Okay, we've got Kenneth and Blake.
Sounds like you got some extra notes. So you work with James McGee? I like James.
I also like James.
That is convenient for you then.
Yes, he's a good guy.
He really is. If you don't mind, please tell him that Eugene said hello. And I was talking to him on Discord yesterday, but I would appreciate that.
Also, I will give you my business.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I would love to talk.
Yes.
Hello, Blake and Finn also. We're waiting for a couple more students to, we are waiting for a couple more students to grace us with their presence. I think lunch ran a little bit long. Yes. There can be on the floor nominees.
Because I know.
I would, that is the man that would know exactly how that works. How to nominate leadership nominees on the floor. And I forgot, like, does somebody have to nominate him and somebody second it and then he's on the list?
We do normally take nominations on the floor, especially after the first round. Like,
Mhm.
like people who get bored. Then
Yeah.
There's some people that remove their name from consideration and whatnot. But yeah, I think we'll open up the floor, like,
Okay,
open nominations. And yeah, it would just, like, you can nominate yourself, but it doesn't require. a second.
yeah,
So you just need one other person to be like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's required, but I think it would be helpful if you had, because everybody that's been nominated has submitted like their resume.
Right.
Be ready, so it isn't like, here's 10 nominees in the resume, and someone else.
And some other
You know,
guy,
so you can-
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my thing where I was like, I had originally, I think I applied for like the director, it's, you know, I was like, I will probably do a competition. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, cool. And so I thought that's what I DM'd you about it, because I was like, I had put in the competition also after the deadline.
Yeah.
And so I was like, can we switch the board of directors one over?
I
to
got
after
that.
that? And then.
Like I said, you can be nominated on the floor. The deadline is more to your benefit, so that you can like get it in and then get your name and your CV and stuff out to members. So that.
yeah. I was gonna say, if you get nominated on the floor and it gets seconded, I would have like that Discord message ready to go in member general. Enter, and then your resume pops up, so
Which is
people
also
can
a good
look
show
at it.
For you too, it's not like, I just did it on the list.
So I would do that.
Yeah.
That was my thing, where I was like, I have all that literally already.
Good,
More
good.
or less, I was just like. Yeah, because that's still.
Yeah.
I discuss so well for the next like foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I get it.
I literally was like, NACE.
Hi, Claire. We're also waiting just for a couple of more students to gather in. I think lunch ran a little bit long for some students. So we're looking to gather a few more folks. I think we're good. I think we're cruising. That's fine.
What is it, Texas West?
Texas Wesleyan, yeah.
Do we have people
Now I'm
online?
Columbia College.
We've got 4 people online.
I don't mind trying. We'll do one last pass and see if there's
Okay.
anyone I can round up.
Any additional students? Yeah, we're gonna do one last pass, y'all, to look for some students, and then we'll get started. So thank you for being patient.
So, finally, somewhat being able to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you've been a little busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
You've been a little busy the past couple months.
Yeah. More flights in the past 6 months I've been at.
Your whole life, yeah, sounds about right.
Been pretty impressive. I'm seeing how long I can keep this streak going.
You're gonna crash. Get brace for the crash.
sustainable plan.
So-
Right?
Colin. Oh, man.
Hello, welcome. Hello.
Hello,
I didn't check
Get out.
it.
So you obviously, I might know where you were from because I gave you your badge and I can make your shirt, right? Yeah. And you're from, awesome, welcome. Yes, we will,
What are y'all names?
that's Connor from Coffeeville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you stop? What
Connor.
was your name? I know I met you earlier, right? Ryan. Yes. I'm Eugene. Nice to meet you. And I'm from Texas Wesleyan, so like a little south of Fort Worth
So close.
in Texas. Trying to be scripted. Oh, cool. Okay. That's awesome.
You don't have to. That's right. It's up to you.
Fine.
Okay, we're good.
Allison's not here, he's in the room right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Excellent. All right, y'all. So, welcome to learn about your association. This overview will give you guys kind of a better idea of kind of what NACE is and who we are. Especially because I think traditionally as students, you guys play a NACE competition, and that's kind of where the buck ends. There's not a lot of additional information that you get kind of about NACE, who we are, what we do. So that is what we are going to accomplish today. If I can get the slides to pop up for myself, or actually, is there? Yeah, because I can't get this.
Sorry, y'all.
Well, like-
Game plan.
like I'm-
Man, AJ, bam.
I'm pushing this button. It's not. Oh, I think that's the problem. Okay, so it is on 2 screens. So if I just hit that, well, never mind, we're gonna do that then. Okay, just hit the space bar. Okay, so this gives you guys an idea of kind of the different things that we're gonna chat through today. Generally, kind of what is NACE, who we are as an overview. Give you guys some indicators of kind of what makes us different from maybe some of the other folks that you guys may have been competing with as your time. We're also going to review how leadership works within NACE, really review how decisions get made and why the association goes in what direction that it goes in. We'll do a little bit more of a deep dive into the student rep program, since that's all very, very important to you guys. And then we'll definitely have some times for some Q&A.
One thing really quick, I wanted to say that I love about NACE, and I know Michael Jones and we should probably introduce ourselves, that I love about NACE, that is fantastic, that makes us different than other groups. As AJ mentioned, if you've competed in NACE before, it could be easy as a student to think, well, that's the place where I compete, but we're a full association that has leagues as part of it. And then we have stuff like this and some other things that we're going to talk about as additional features to it. So it isn't just, this is the group that we play matches in. This is the group that we support and that supports us and like an ecosystem and whatever. But my name is Eugene Fryer, and I'm the director of esports and gaming at Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth, Texas.
And my name is Michael Jones. I'm the head coach of the varsity esports program at Drury University in Springfield, Missouri. And I'm the chair-elect of the board of directors.
Excellent. And I am AJ. I am the director of membership for NACE. Have some coaching experience in my background, but we're not going to talk about that today. All right, so NACE, we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson. So NACE was formed back in about 2016. It was kind of a meeting of the minds with 7 of the universities that adopted esports at kind of the varsity level, kind of the founding fathers, if you will. So they got together and they decided that creating an association to help support varsity collegiate esports programs was the way to go. And they were right. So this really kind of goes over, we're really kind of honing in on the fact that NACE is membership driven, which means that any direction, any project, anything that NACE puts out there, anything that we have you guys compete in or participate in, really is all from membership feedback, whether that be from leadership, general body, or from what we've heard from students. We help members also kind of get varsity programs off the ground. That's kind of like one of the pillars of my job is helping universities that come to us and they're like, we would love to have esports. We have no idea where to start. So one of my primary jobs is helping institutions figure out how esports can work on their campus, what it might look like for their campus. And then the second half of the job definitely is helping ensure that once these programs get their feet under themselves and they're ready to compete, that we're able to continue to support those programs. Providing network between administrators and recruiters. That's definitely something that will be kind of a big focus for us this upcoming year. Collective voice, representing a large majority of varsity programs. So within kind of North America at this point, we're the National Association of Collegiate Esports, but we definitely have footholds in Canada, and the University of Guam is also a NACE member. So we pretty much just span the entirety of North America at this point, and we do currently have, I believe the exact number is 215 NACE members currently within our association. So this heat map is a little bit out of date. There should be a lot more dots, but this kind of gives you guys a visual representation of where a lot of our leadership lies. As you can see, we are very kind of East Coast, Midwest heavy, but we are starting to see a lot more programs from the West Coast have an interest in NACE as they continue to build out their programs. So NACE, when I'm talking to schools, what we are looking for are institutions that are varsity programs. And I know that nobody online can really see the quotes, but I'm doing quotes around varsity because that word means some different things to some different people, different admins. So pretty much everything that you guys see on the screen is really what we're looking for in terms of leadership, understanding when we say varsity programs. It's really these things that we're looking. It's kind of our checklist. So for varsity programs, we are looking for folks to have dedicated staff members to help run the program, help oversee the program. We're looking for dedicated space. It can be on or off campus. We're really just looking for a facility that both the staff and the students are able to access for practices, competition, really to get things, whatever they need to get done. Number 3, recruitment. We're always looking to make sure that the programs that we're bringing into NACE also have some sort of recruitment programming or structure. Again, we want to make sure that we're kind of supporting varsity programs, and varsity programs are something that lasts. So recruiting, make sure that once you guys have your pocket of seniors that graduates each semester, that you still have students that are coming in to kind of fill in those gaps on rosters. Number 4, being officially recognized. Basically, at the end of the day, we want to be able to go to your university president, anybody on the executive leadership team at your university, your college, and we just want to point to your program and be like, hey, is like this your program? Is this the universities? Is this the college's esports program? Number 5, institutional accreditation is not, we can't do anything about that. Basically, the institution just needs to be accredited. We have kind of a list of accreditation bodies that is within our constitution and bylaws. So as long as the school falls under one of those, you're good to go. And then number 6 would be once an institution agrees to being a part of NACE and gets on board with membership, they just follow the constitution and bylaws that we have. So this is the student page. So we talked a little bit at the institutional level, what it is that we're looking for when we're bringing folks into membership. From the student perspective, these are really some of the eligibility requirements that we're looking for, especially in terms of competition. So number 1 and 2, that's basically referring to making sure that students are enrolled full-time. They can be undergrad, they can be grad. Doesn't really matter what degree they're seeking as long as they're enrolled full-time by whatever standards that looks like by the institution. That works for us. And then the second one, really that kind of path to graduation. We're ensuring that the students that are participating are making good academic progress, or they're in good academic standing. Really whatever language your university uses to determine what that looks like. As long as you guys are within those bounds, within your university's guidelines, that works for us. Competition location. This one really references when we're looking at student participation that during NACE competition, the students are together and competing within the same facility. That can stay as is or can be changed tomorrow, depending on how voting goes. But as it's currently written, those are kind of the parameters that we currently have in place. Number 4 and 5, those actually refer to the pieces of eligibility documentation that both the students and the staff members of those students go through. So your intent to compete form, if you've been in NACE, you have already signed one. Maybe for this year, probably last year if you were here last year. So your intent to compete form, that is the DocuSign form that you get from us where, you state your name, you'll be participating for Texas Wrestling and you're going to be playing League of Legends. So that's a yearly document that both the staff and the students sign off on. The eligibility certificate doesn't really have any student intervention. That one is completed by the staff members, and they basically are telling us that, okay, Ashley Jones is taking 15 credit hours in the fall. So once you guys have drop ad completed and you know exactly how many credit hours you're taking, that's when we expect to see eligibility certificates submitted for all the students that are signed up for competition. And then number 6, this actually kind of refers back to the intent to compete form. This one really is just referencing that once a student signs their first intent to compete form, that they have 5 calendar years to be eligible to participate within competition. So that's kind of what student requirements. Again, those are the things that we're looking for. A lot of this is completely outlined within our constitution and bylaws, but this is just all the important stuff on one page. Central office staff. If you don't know who we are, there is 4 of us kind of running the association from the national office staff. So you have Michael Brooks. He is the executive director. He works with sponsorships, works with partnerships, and generally just helps other odds and ends of the association. You've got JJ Myers, who's the director of competition. So he would be somebody that you would reach out to if you're having issues in terms of competition, if you have questions. He is in the Discord server as Coach JJ. I'm AJ, I've introduced myself. You would come to me if you had any questions in regard to membership, just general questions about it. And then Mikey Torres, he is kind of a support for JJ. So he would really kind of be your first line of defense when you have a question about competition that you would like answered. If Mikey can't get you an answer, JJ will be able to get you that answer. But there's just us, that's us 4 at the whole national office. Now tell me, how is NACE different?
That's an excellent question, AJ. Once again, my name is Michael Jones. I'm the head coach of esports at Drury University in Springfield, Missouri. And this is a really interesting question, one that I've been trying to answer myself for quite some time. I think I have some very compelling answers to that question, but from the perspective of a student, I can't lie when I say that it is not maybe the most exciting thing on its face. A lot of the good that NACE does for you and will continue to do for collegiate esports long after you graduate doesn't necessarily make headlines. It isn't the sexiest thing, but it's all very necessary work. So if you read through our Constitution and bylaws, pretty early on in the Constitution, it mentions that sort of one of the main goals of NACE is to ensure that students are on a path to graduation, that they're actually matriculating. And I'm sure some of you have seen this or experienced it firsthand. The prevalency of students transferring or speaking with an institution and thinking that the program is going to be one way or that their scholarship is going to be one way and it's not, and it's a different way. The space is still very much the Wild West. And over the last 5 or 6 years, we've made tremendous strides in starting to establish some more rules and policies, which, once again, is not the most exciting, but very important to have in place. And on that note, we spent a lot of time early on, I think, looking at how traditional athletics works, but also acknowledge that we didn't want to just reinvent that wheel, that we have a tremendous opportunity to look at esports at the professional and semi-professional level to look at the NCAA and what does and does not work about their overall setup and their relationship to students. Same with the NAIA and NJCAA, or AA, and then E as they got into esports. That's the community college version of the NCAA, if you were unfamiliar. And we were able to kind of take the best of what worked there, but then adapt it to fit esports. And that's often the situation we find ourselves in, where, you know, half of the things we do, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just take it from basketball or football or traditional athletics. And then everything else is completely different and requires its own bespoke solution, especially for us. So as you'll see up on the slide here, NACE is a nonprofit membership association, which means that it is not a charity, but it is a not-for-profit. Now, if you are knowledgeable on those things and you go looking up paperwork, you'll find that NACE in and of itself is technically registered as a business, but it is wholly owned by the NAIA, which is a nonprofit. So it functions as a nonprofit organization. We're just not currently registered as our own 501c3 with the IRS. Doesn't make it not a nonprofit. So what makes us different? That main fact that we are a nonprofit membership association. So we are not here to try to make a profit, hence the nonprofit. Money is made, and that money comes from your schools. Your institutions pay dues. Where does that money go? Well, AJ showed you a slide of the 4 full-time staff members. If you want cool things to happen in esports, it takes time, it takes money, and it takes man hours mostly. It takes a lot of people and their hard work and their expertise. And we want to keep those people. We want to get great people. We have great people. We want to keep those people, and that costs money. I think just about everyone at the national office is pretty well compensated, but ultimately they're still working at a nonprofit, right? So we're always going to be fighting that fight of trying to keep them when a for-profit business comes along and says, hey, we'll give you 2, 3, 4 times what you make to do basically the same thing or less. So that can be a detriment at times, right? Like there is a profit motive that is very useful in solving big problems, right? You know, for all the flaws of capitalism, there are positives as well. You got to bring a bunch of resources together to tackle a big problem. So we're able to do that, but the excess doesn't go into our pockets or the executive director's pockets. We do marketing. We're with the partnership with Playfly, the NACE Star League, sort of the joint venture between us, NACE, the nonprofit, and what was previously CSL, they're now Playfly Esports, the for-profit. We kind of came together to make a third thing, and that is the NACE Star League. That is the entity that runs competition. We collaborate on it. NACE, as a nonprofit, does a lot of the rules making and governance and things. So what makes us different? The fact that we get to do that. So without naming any names, if you're playing in another league, just about every league in collegiate esports that isn't us is a for-profit enterprise, or it is a grassroots thing ran by a student or a group of students. And I don't say this to put any of those efforts down because they're awesome, but they're much harder to scale if it's just a few students working on a passion project, right? So this joint venture allows us to bring in some of that money and use that revenue to continue to invest in the growth of the collegiate esports space. And if we make a bunch of money one year, then that's going to stay in NACE's budget and roll over to the next year to do cool things. You're never going to see like, oh, we have an extra $100,000 at the end of the year. Let's divvy it up between our staff members and give them a huge bonus. They might get a pay raise, right? But you know, they're not going to just get a check and be like, hey, great job. Here's 50K that we swindled out of these students or something like that. That's not the case. Your institutions are paying the bulk of NACE's budget. A good chunk of our operating funds also come from sponsorships. So when your director gets an email saying, hey, check out this company that makes gaming chairs or computers or other things, that company has given the association money to be connected to our membership, potential customers for them. So it's a mutually beneficial thing. And we try and kind of toe that line and make sure we're only suggesting good companies, good products, good services that we would want our members to work with. So I'd say that is the main benefit, that we are a nonprofit, that we have the resources that the schools have pooled together to work on your behalf. If you don't like the way something is going, if you want to see a rule changed, you can propose it. And if enough of the members say they want that to happen, it happens. right? We don't have to get permission from the guy who owns the company. The only time that our hands are really tied is in working with the developers. And to me, that is the other major benefit of NACE, is that we can serve as sort of a collective bargaining group. We can be all of the schools together and send a single representative, a full-time staff member whom you are paying to represent you, to bring those concerns to developers to say, hey, we'd like to run a league. Because if you want to do that, if any one of you want to do that, start a competition or run a tournament in a game. Each title is different. They have community guidelines, and you can run a League of Legends tournament as long as there's X number of teams and the prize pool doesn't go above whatever, and your sponsors aren't objectionable. They're not on this no list of sponsors. Then you can kind of do what you want. Well, we don't want to just do that. We don't want to have a one-off tournament. We can do that, and that would be fun. And we do that when it's our only resort. But what we want to do is run a full season through the whole fall, and then do it again in the spring and crown a national champion at the end of that. And as soon as you want to do something at that scale, the developers get involved because it's their intellectual property. And if enough money is exchanging hands, they want a little bit of it. And oftentimes the teams at the publishers who run the collegiate side of their esports department is like a person or a couple people. So our staff as a whole is generally bigger, with only 4 currently, and there's a 5th position. There's a marketing director that is currently vacant. We're looking to hire. That's a larger team than most of these small indie companies, these big publishers that make these games have devoted to the collegiate side. So because we have these resources, because we have these people, we can go to the publishers and say, we want to do X. And by we, I mean most of the varsity esports programs in the country, right? Yeah, please.
One thing that we didn't mention, but just kind of dawned on me that I think is an important difference with NACE. This is Eugene from Texas Wesleyan again, in Texas. That is different with NACE than a lot of the third-party developers or honestly even the publisher-led leagues. Is if you look at the central office staff, as AJ had up on the slide a second ago, it's Michael Brooks, AJ, JJ, and Mikey. They've all worked in education before. Michael Brooks, prior to working with NACE, worked in the NAIA, which is not the NCAA, but like the NCAA type organization for athletics for schools that are classified as NAIA. So he was working with schools before doing this. AJ used to be a program director at Park University. JJ used to be a coach. Mikey used to be a player and a coach. Like, the people in our central office that are doing things have lived what you do. And this is the thing Michael Jones and I have talked about too with our respective journeys. We've seen some of the things that are like, oh, that's bad. Let's make that better. And that's really what NACE is to me in a lot of ways. A group of people, the leadership groups, and we'll talk about that in a bit, the central office staff, but especially the members that see what esports can be and are working towards that. And not just like, games are cool, want to play in a league? Like, no, how can we have the best league possible? And how can we make it better next year? And how can we pull in more games? We have the agreement that, I don't know if it's been talked about yet, but I know it's talked about at conference with chess. We've done stuff with NASCAR. We've done stuff with things that maybe don't fit into the traditional esports box, but speak to gamers who want to be competitive on all college campuses or most college campuses. So I think that's another interesting point of what makes us different.
No, you're fine. That's an excellent point. Looking at this next slide, opportunities outside of competition, there's a lot on there. We've covered quite a bit of it already. The real benefit, I think, to being an ACE member is that list is whatever you want it to be. If there's something that you think that the association should be doing to benefit you, to benefit your institution, to benefit collegiate esports as a whole, and we're not doing it, we'll almost surely do it if enough people want us to. We in some ways, like I said, our hands are tied occasionally when working with publishers because ultimately they hold the intellectual property and we have to abide by their rulings. And occasionally there's some things where it's like, hey, that's a great idea, but you're not aware of the context that by nature of how, trying to negotiate with for-profit businesses, on the board, we occasionally have access to some information that we can't, by definition, share with everybody. And that's why it is structured like this, why members elect a board of directors, a competition council. For example, the competition council meets weekly for an hour to an hour and a half and has for the last couple of years, because 3-4 years ago when I went to the NACE convention in Harrisburg, I was personally not happy with the progress we were making. I had a lot of issues with competition. I wasn't sure what the purpose of the association was. And some people who attended that convention went, well, that must mean NACE is bad and not valuable, and kind of wrote it off. And to be fair, like I don't fault them for that, because at the time there were a lot of things we weren't doing well. But I saw the underlying promise, and that's that final bullet point: voting rights. If you don't like what you're doing, if you don't like what we're doing, you know, we are us. Stand up and say, I think it should be this way. And if enough people agree with you, it will happen.
And to Michael Jones' credit, at that conference convention in Harrisburg, he got involved and he joined the competition council, and then he was nominated as the chair of the competition council. And then he helped lead that group for 2 years, and then got elected on the board of directors. And now he's the chair-elect for the board of directors. So while a student can't do those things right now, the SRP that we're going to talk about in a bit is a good avenue for that, but it's also just the possibility of change. Like one of my friends used to always say is, just because something's broken doesn't mean you should throw it away. I don't think NACE has ever been broken. There have been some broken parts in all parts of collegiate esports. But what I love about NACE is, well, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? Can you go back to the slide it was just on really quick? Are you changing it? How is it changing? Oh, I'll just get up then. I'll use the microphone.
Cool.
Let me show one more thing.
Yeah, please.
It did. No, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. So another good example is on the top first sub bullet point, the SRP, student rep program, and the mentorship program. Those came from the mentorship program. AJ saw that new members coming in were overwhelmed. Like if they're coming from a school that didn't have club esports, that didn't have a history of competition, but wanted to jump in the space, they're like, okay, we're here. What do we do? So we had an association that would support on a macro level, but like, how can we give personal assistance? So AJ made the mentorship program. So these schools are given the opportunity to, and if they say no, they don't have to, but they're given the opportunity to have a mentor who runs a program at a different school that like is on speed dial in Discord, a reference that might not make sense for everybody in this room. Easy access, like, hey, help me quick, please. You know, and it's like, that's my person, I'm gonna help that person. And it just kind of helps support overall.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I'll wrap up this section on sort of the positive aspects of NACE with sort of one final point. Was the next slide also?
That is how we talk.
Competitive title selection. Excellent. So this kind of gives you another look into how we operate, right? So it's like, well, why don't we do a competition in X? Like, okay, we don't have Rainbow Six Siege yet. Why? Well, you're not playing it. And those of you that are don't constitute a large enough group to warrant running a competition for it. Now, because we have this joint partnership with Playfly, the NACE Star League, we can still have a competition in a less popular title because we can open it up and have that be in the open division where you play with some other club teams. But for the titles that are very supported, we can have that varsity only flight, which, you know, may not mean a ton to you, or maybe it does if you've ever been a captain or have been tasked with coordinating with the other team and had a no-show because a student at another university was like, oh, hey, I forgot. I didn't put it on my schedule. I got a test tonight. I can't, we got to study, sorry. And it's 5 minutes before your game and the stream's getting ready to go live and you put in all this effort. Now the game falls apart. Well, that happens less in the varsity flight because I know your coach and I picked up the phone and called him a week ago and said, hey, we're playing next week, right? So there's that structure, there's that support. On the competition side, we're following you guys. We're following the trends. So if a new game comes out tomorrow and half of all of our member school students begin playing it, then we may have a competition in it by spring if we can, right? We're kind of, it's the tail wagging the dog a little bit where like you tell us what you want and then we'll make that happen in a timely fashion within the bounds of whatever publisher runs the game and allows us to do. And we've had a lot of other opportunities. There was an opportunity to maybe do something with like Splitgate, for example. Really cool game, was really hot and popular and fun at the time. I don't know how many of your peers are still playing that game now. So there is a established process to go through. And I think the last point I'll make, and we'll get into it in a little bit more detail here as we talk about the leadership groups, but I just can't stress enough the importance on all of you of this student representative program. Because you will be a new official leadership group. And with that will come the power to write and propose legislation. Now, you're not fully franchised like the directors of your programs, but you sort of are in that it's one vote per institution. And as you as students get more involved, particularly the student reps, you start to learn some of these nuances, and then you can go back to your campuses and at a team meeting be like, hey, NACE is thinking about doing this. It might impact you guys in X, Y, and Z. What do you think? I'm looking forward to that day, because right now I just make decisions on what to vote on, kind of based off of my own knowledge and expertise and what I think would be good. But as more things happen that might affect students, I can go back to my team and be like, what do you guys think? This affects you more than it does me per se. You know, you have a 5-year eligibility clock. What if you want to go to grad school and play for a 6th year? Right now you can't. Do you want to change that? Well, you can. The SRO will be able to not vote on stuff directly to make it a change to the Constitution and bylaws, but if you wanted to like put up a piece of legislation that says, we want NACE to have a competition in Rainbow Six next year, whether there's 1 team or 30, you can do that. And it'll go to the business meeting, and all of the coaches and directors will vote on it. And I think all of them will be very hesitant to completely shoot down and shut down an idea that most of our best and brightest future leader students have come up with. Right? So this is an opportunity for you guys to really finally lead from the front. As much as we talk about it's a nonprofit and the members have a big say in it, that's true and has been true. But the most important constituents are not me, the coaches and directors, they're you guys. This is why we do all of this, is for the benefit of students and for the benefit of your futures. And that's why we have some rules that maybe don't make as much sense at first, but it's like, why do I only get 5 years of school? Well, because of competing, and it's, if we don't have that rule, then at least one school will keep a student on, 1 credit of underwater basket weaving every semester and playing League of Legends for 8 years. That's not good for you. It's not good for the school. It's not good for the ecosystem. So we have a rule in place. We have a self-imposed limitation because we all agree that it would be helpful. And there may be more rules like that in the future. At this very convention, we're going to be voting on the ability to have sort of more exceptions for students to play remotely. That very substantively affects all of you, and your coaches and directors have a lot of opinions about it, and it's going to be a pretty hefty discussion in the business meeting. But really, your opinions on the matter should be centered in that discussion. And so the SRO will provide for that, especially as it grows and you get more and more of your students, your peers on your campus involved. So I could talk for ages about why NACE is great, but I think I hit the highlights there. So I'm going to pass it over to Eugene.
Hey, thanks. It's Eugene again. Yeah, I mean, and to echo one thing that Michael Jones just said, students are the most important part of NACE. If students aren't a part of NACE, what is NACE? Like, it's not like, well, we'll find someone else. Like, no, it's like we are about students. That's what it's all about. So we mentioned a few groups. I wanted to go through the leadership groups with y'all really quick. We mentioned a few groups, and I wanted to kind of explain what they are really quick. So one of them is the board of directors. The current chair for the board of directors is Joey. He's wearing salmon pants today. If you get to see him, feel free to yell salmon pants at him. He's the chair. Michael Jones, as I mentioned, is the chair-elect. And then you see the rest of the folks that are on the board right there. I currently serve as an advisor to the board because I was previously the chair of the board of directors, but as my term ended a year ago, this past year has been an advisory role. And blah, 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 purpose, like official, that's from the Constitution. But the job of the board is to supervise Michael Brooks, the executive director, and help run the association. It's similar to every college campus has a president, chancellor, some person that's at the top. That person is supervised by a board of regents, board of trustees, a collective group that supervises the person that runs the whole. That's what the board does for Michael Brooks and for the association. What I love about our board specifically, can you go back real quick, please? Thank you. What I love about our board specifically is the representation and varied viewpoints that we have. Sean, from a school in Canada, worked in esports for like 15 years so far, is arguably one of the most knowledgeable and plugged in people on the esports landscape, both from a competitive and an academic side of things based on what he teaches on his campus. I'm not going to go through every single person, but I'm just going to kind of cherry pick some examples. Travis Yang has a tremendous amount of experience competing and coaching. James McGee right after him. If he was here right now, he would tell you, I don't understand esports. But he's a dean of students and he's worked in higher education for like 20 years. And if you come to the legislation session later on and you hear the student code of conduct stuff and there are words you don't understand, James told us to put those words there because he writes student code of conduct for a living. So like he's got the perspective of students. We all have the perspective of students, but it's different kind of vantage points. Jim Carr on there, he's the person in charge of the NAIA. He's been a coach. He's been an executive with the NAIA. Now he's the main person at the NAIA. We're all pulling the rope in the same direction, but we're all bringing different perspectives to help kind of achieve that goal. And that's what the board of directors is. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you very much. The competition council, Adam Antor is the chair. Chase Newcomb is the chair-elect. And as Michael Jones has mentioned several times, they meet weekly and they have passionate discussions at times about everyone on this group cares about competition, cares about competitive integrity, wants it to be the best possible. But they also want to find the resources that will allow us to make it the best possible. So some of it's going to be conversations about rule sets. Some of it's going to be conversations about new titles to bring in. Some about partnerships, maybe. Who can we work with to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the students that we have in our association? So that's a key group for what is the core of NACE. We have all the stuff around it, but the core is the competition. Like, we have the extra things around it, but the core is the competition, and they help drive that part. The other current leadership group that we have, a full-time staff, is the Eligibility Enforcement Committee. James is the chair and Danielle is the chair-elect. And they're the main interpreters of all the Constitution and bylaws and all like the official languaging that we have. And they're responsible for coordinating and helping to run like the the ITC and the eligibility certificate and all that kind of stuff. So they're the one that is honestly often least seen. They're only really thought about by general members, unfortunately, in those couple weeks when stuff is due, but they are constantly putting work in on work that a lot of times isn't sexy, isn't like, we should review the Constitution today. Like, people don't want to do that all the time. They do, and we need that to happen for us to be successful. Yeah, absolutely.
Piggybacking off that real quick, if you guys have played in another league and then gotten to a playoff match and then, or seen this happen to other teams, and then because of how the league operates and because they don't have the manpower and the support to get transcripts from every student at the start of the semester to ensure they're eligible, like, you know, traditional sports does, the NAIA, the NCAA hires like a fleet of temporary employees during the season where all that paperwork gets processed to make sure it happens in a timely fashion. Most other leagues in collegiate esports are, when you make playoffs, we will ask you to send us a copy of your unofficial transcript, which, like, it doesn't take much thought to think about 10 different ways to loophole around that system and play even if you're ineligible, to break the rules, to cheat. And this happens in every esport title last year. There have been teams that have been kicked out of playoffs because they had a student with like a 1.0 or who was only enrolled in one class. And, you know, there's a lot of competitive integrity issues, and we're going to be talking about some of them in the legislative sessions today. But that should concern you guys greatly, because you have to go to calculus and sit in a class and live in the dorm on campus and jump through all these hoops being a full-time student. And then you're playing a team that might not even be students. That happens over the summer. So how do you avoid that? You have an eligibility enforcement committee that does the unsexy work of looking at a bunch of paperwork and going, yes, you are in fact a student. Yes, you are actually matriculating and on your way to graduation, right? Not exciting, but a necessity when it comes to collegiate athletics. We are the only collegiate esports group that has anything close to like a national letter of intent system like you see in traditional athletics. It's not quite there yet, and hopefully in another couple of years, we'll have the money and support to bring in that fleet of document processors before the start of a season. But right now, it's everyone up on that slide. They like hop in a Discord call for 12 hours and just chug through it so that they can ensure that everyone is like actually eligible and should be competing. Now, there's still a little bit of a honor system in there, because when I fill out the EC, I'm just signing a form that says, yes, in fact, all of my students are eligible. So a lot of this is still based on the trust system, but the bones are there, and we're going to continue building this out. And that's kind of the same for all of this. We're about anywhere between like 10 and 90% of the way to all of our goals at any given time. We're always improving on them because esports constantly changes. The college landscape is constantly changing. The needs of our students are constantly changing. So we're adaptable.
Michael's exactly right, but it is funny to think about, like, if someone were to try to sell you yeah, this is like between 10 and 90% effective. You might not want it, but that's just like the nature of the collegiate esports landscape. Like there are some issues that we have today that just didn't exist 2 years ago. You know what I mean? And people talk about collegiate esports kind of works in like dog years. Like, 2 years in the real world is 14 years in collegiate esports because so much can happen. I think about, just as a quick aside to illustrate that, when I pitched my program in 2017, the example that I primarily used when talking to admins that didn't understand esports or Twitch or anything like that, but like number wise, it was like, there's this game called PUBG. You don't understand what it is, but it's huge. Look at these numbers. The 4 or 5 months later, when the program was approved, and some of those people that didn't understand esports or video games were like, so tell me more about this PUBG game. Having to explain to them, well, there's a new game called Fortnite, you see, and just how the landscape was so different in less than half a year. It's just kind of crazy to me. So the student rep program, just by quick show of hands, how many of y'all have heard of this before this meeting today? Okay. The student rep program? Okay, totally cool. No, it's not like you didn't raise your hand, please leave. Thank you for your time today, everybody. No, but the idea for this came from, and there's a lot of words on the screen right now, but I'm just going to keep it very simple. How can what we talk about on our campus a lot, sometimes it's cool to have things that this is what we do, but how can we paper it up? How can we make it official? How can we codify student representation and student involvement? And that's what the SRP is about. So it's all about how can we enhance the mission or enhance the experience, of students at NACE member institutions. How can we promote these opportunities, promote welfare? It's one thing, everybody knows this, no matter where you're at in life, you have your peers and you have those above you, like in the classroom, it's teachers, at work, it's your boss, whatever it might be. Sometimes your boss can tell you, this is a good idea 20 times. Your parents can tell you, this is a good idea 20 times. He's like, yeah, okay. And then a friend tells you the same thing once and you're like, what? I should look into that. That's a good idea. That's the power of peer leadership. It's the power of like, yeah, I'm supposed to say certain things because I'm a director of esports and gaming. But if somebody in my program tells their peers something that's the same thing, there might be a higher chance of like, oh no, that's like, there's no angle for them. They're just trying to help me out, kind of. This group can help with that for members as well. We all know this. It says protect student welfare. Everybody does this on some level if you love games. That's some students on our campus talk about, I'm all about that grind set. I'm trying to, the new season comes out, and they try to, whatever. I do it too. Like when the new Warcraft expansion comes out, I'm taking a week off work and I'm gonna play 20 hours a day. Like everybody does it if you love games. But when you look at the programs that we have and what we're doing long-term in pockets, okay, that's okay. But when we look at long-term, how can we make sure this is sustainable? How can we make sure this keeps going? How can we make sure students are still making their grades and being healthy? How can we make sure that 5 years from now, there are still people that want to do this job and students that still want to take part in these programs? SRP helps with that kind of stuff. Okay. I feel like y'all talk more than I did. I don't understand that, but no, it's AJ was like real vocal and now she's telling me to hurry up, but no, I know. Gosh. No, but it really is a student voice. Like I was saying at the beginning, it is like, how can we make sure that there is an official way? We don't want things to happen. We don't want it to be like, yeah, we've had some vocal students, so we've got some feedback and that's great. We want it to be, here's a system for us to collect feedback from students. And if outside of that, there's vocal students, awesome. And if there isn't, we have this system, That way, if none of us are here in 3 years, if none of the people that I had on the slide are here in 3 years, if none of the people on any program right now, that would be like a horrible transition. But nobody running a program at any institution is there 3 years from now. The things that we have in place here will help make sure that what we're doing is going to continue. And the student's voice in what we do is critical to that. So that's where the SRP comes from. So really quick in closing, nonprofit, membership driven. We want to hear from the association. We have elected leaders making decisions on behalf of the association, but we have elections on the things that we're trying to institute as well. So we're getting that further feedback from members. And what we do comes from what people are asking for. Michael Jones brought up the NACE Star League earlier. That came from a lot of feedback from members of, we want to see these changes in competition. And we as NACE couldn't do that on our own at that time. So Michael Brooks started looking for collaborative like partners to do that with. And he found one that it seems like is perfect right now. So we were able to elevate what we were doing in that regard. We truly do value ideas and suggestions, especially from students. We play in the area that y'all live in. We need to hear from students what's happening so we can make things better. We can continue to improve. We're never going to be done. We're always going to have work to do. And that feedback loop needs to always be open. So any feedback that y'all want to share at any point, please feel free to. We'd love to talk about it. Yeah, questions?
Yes.
That's all we have.
I was gonna say, I did drop in the chat just now. If anybody online has any questions for us, we have kind of reached the end of our PowerPoint presentation.
And it can be about what we talked about. It can be about NACE in general. It can be about the Warcraft Dragonflight Alpha that's released. The new patch came out this week. Some exciting changes with the Evoker class. It can be whatever you guys want.
That is still me. I just dyed my hair. Just clear. There's a lot of people that didn't recognize me because I was no longer a blonde.
Is that the right title for you?
Yep.
I thought you were the VP of.
I am not the vice president of the Washington Justice, which may have solved yesterday on social media, and that was a mistake. Still work at NACE, not employed by the Washington Justice. But there is all of our email addresses. If you guys have any additional questions after this, definitely feel free to reach out to us. I also put the info@NACE email address as well. So if you guys want to get in touch really with anybody from the national office specifically, that would be great.
We do have a question.
We
from
do.
online.
What is your process for adding new games to NACE?
That's a great question.
So we'll go back to the,
We'll share the slides. I can jump in on this if that's all right.
yeah.
I appreciate it.
excellent. You did this.
I did do this. Yeah, I was the chair of the competition council for a bit. And we had a lot of conversations about like, do we need a formal process to decide how we add new games? We decided against it, that it's better to have the CC kind of like look at all factors. But generally we take in a lot of survey data, which is tough because not everyone always fills out every survey. And that's why when we say like, hey, please give us your feedback, we like really mean it. Respond to any surveys that get sent out, even if it's just like, hey, I like Rainbow Six. That is helpful because it's like a data point that we can then track and say there is at least some demand here. But we survey the institutions on both, what titles are you thinking about adding? And then we look at basic demographic data as well on like how many people are playing a game, how old are they, right? Are they of college age? Like, is there a large population that would actually play this game if we supported it? And then more recently, we've been having sort of a minimum, like we need at least 8 schools or something, 16 schools to justify having a NACE specific varsity competition. So for example, this upcoming school year, I don't think we're gonna have a NACE only varsity CSGO competition. Yeah, same thing with like FIFA. There's not enough teams or players from NACE member schools to have a NACE only competition, but there will still be competition in those games in the NACE Star League as a whole. So you can play in the open divisions against club teams and other teams as well, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that, by the way. And that's a big kind of piece of that puzzle as well. But I think that mostly answers the question. If you have a follow-up or if I didn't quite cover what you wanted out of that question, person online who asked it,
You can see the finger gun.
please feel free to add some clarification. Anyone in the room have a question? Let me get the mic to you so that folks online can hear you.
Excellent.
Here you go, sir. And please introduce yourself and say what institution you're from for the benefit of those online.
My name is Mike McFerrin. I'm with Bumble Bear Games. So we're an arcade company, and we're looking to try to get into competitive esports, especially in collegiate levels. But going off of that question, does it have to be an institution that has a varsity program for it to be like a sanctioned title, or is it, because you said there's an open competition and then a varsity only, so those schools have to have a varsity program?
Great question. And if you want to talk a little bit more after this, I can give you a more in-depth kind of overview of how both NACE and the NACE Star League, which is sort of the joint venture between us and this other company, functions. But to kind of answer the question, if there is a NACE specific varsity only competition, Then yes, you have to be a NACE member, which requires you to be a varsity program, which is kind of a nebulous definition. We covered it here. Every school does it a little differently. Some schools have their programs under athletics, some have it under student life. So that means different things, but we have a general guideline to say this is what a varsity program is. But within the NACE Star League, there's sort of the varsity tier, which is limited to NACE member schools. There's and then there's two other tiers. One is more competitive than the other, but they're both open. So I run a varsity program. I'm going to put, my best Rocket League team in the NACE varsity tier because I only want them to play against other varsity programs to have that little bit of extra organization and pomp and circumstance around it. But if I had a second team, or let's say a game that I'm starting a new team in and they're not that skilled yet, rather than throwing them to the wolves of like the top tier varsity or top tier open competition, I'll put them in the more casual open competition. So there's basically like three tiers. One is limited to NACE members only. And then the next one below that will probably be the biggest because NACE member schools can field their teams in that, but it's also open to club teams. And that's probably going to be the case for a while, where that kind of quote unquote second tier is the largest and maybe even the most competitive depending on the title. Because, a lot of our best varsity programs are smaller schools, and there are club teams from universities with like 50,000 students that do pretty well despite not being varsity programs. And that distinction will be around for a little while longer, but I hope that kind of answered that question. Did we have other questions? Anyone online?
No other questions.
Really hope Rainbow Six gets added, says someone. Yeah,
Oh.
I agree. I think it's a great game. It's just, there's too many games to be played in the world. Any other questions from here in the room?
We've got like
Many
a
of the students
minute.
present. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, everybody. Means a
Thank you,
lot.
guys.
Like I said, no, this isn't the most exciting thing, but it's all very important and speaks to your concerns. So this is how you get involved. If you have any questions, feel free to find any of us.
Yes, find our emails, send us an email. We're all very excited to help.
Before anyone dips out, I just like what was going on next, for specifically, there's not any session going on right now. What is going to be happening is they have a job there down by the terraces. It's exactly what it is on the schedule. So if y'all want to check that out, it's down there. We'll have those sessions going on.
Yeah.
Do you know if NACE is still doing the joint student stuff and helping with,
Garvey. There will be more information coming out about that. Probably. That might be one of them. I would say that's one of them.
Thank you.
You're asking the hard questions that I'm not allowed to answer.